Batfleck's back, alright! Hey guys, Omni here. We got some huge news that came out today right before DC Fandom, and honestly, I'm surprised to be hearing it right now and not, later down the road. It's honestly something I wasn't sure that was going to happen. I thought this was the least likely thing that we were going to hear before this weekend or even going into this weekend. We just got word that Ben Affleck will be coming back. Batfleck's back, guys. He will be playing the role of Bruce Wayne, the Batman, once again in the upcoming Flash film and Andy Muschietti's Flashpoint film. So, guys, I thought we would hear about Henry Cavill being confirmed back to the DCEU long before we would hear about Batfleck. But my God, am I excited. That hypes me up. It also gives me a little concern about maybe seeing him after this. So we'll get into that here a little bit because I want to go into this exclusive news straight from the director's mouth himself in an interview with Vanity Fair regarding this announcement, regarding his involvement in the story that is Flash. So he starts with his Batman has a dichotomy that is very strong, which is his masculinity because of the way he looks and the imposing figure that he has and his jawline. But he's also very vulnerable. He knows how to deliver from the inside out, that vulnerability. He just needs a story that allows him to bring that contrast, that balance. Affleck got the script at the end of last week and agreed this week to join the project. He's a very substantial part of the emotional impact of the movie. The interaction and relationship between Barry and Affleck's Wayne will bring an emotional level that we haven't seen before. It's Barry's movie, it's Barry's story, but their characters are more related than we think. They both lost their mothers to murder, and that's one of the emotional vessels of the movie. That's where the Affleck Batman kicks in. I'm glad to be collaborating with someone who's been on both sides of the camera too, Muschietti said, and he understands. Affleck won't be the only Batman making a comeback. A few more alternate dimension heroes who turn up in the Flash movie will be figures we've seen before. Michael Keaton's Batman from the 1989 Tim Burton film is also set to appear in what Muschietti said was a substantial part. And I think that confirms that Keaton is showing up as his Batman, not as the Thomas Wayne that some people have said, or as it is in fact his Bruce Wayne from the Tim Burton film. I think that solidifies that little debate that has been going on online for a little while too. There's another reason the Flash needed the character affectionately known as Batfleck. In DC's movie universe, Affleck's gray-templed Bruce Wayne is the one that Ezra's Flash would consider the original Batman, the one he has already fought alongside in the previous Zack Snyder films. Muschietti said it didn't work well for him to venture into the company of other Batmen without having Affleck as the starting point. He is the baseline. He's part of that unaltered state before we jump into Barry's adventure. There's a familiarity there. And I want to kind of touch back on that unaltered state. Which means that, just like in the comic, when Barry initiates his adventure through the multiverse and through time, when he comes back, there might be some changes. And honestly, I think with Ben Affleck coming back to take in this role, there's a couple of outcomes that could come about with this. We could see Ben Affleck at the beginning of the movie, this relationship building up with Barry. Barry goes and starts his journey, initiating the Flashpoint scenario. And when he returns, like in the comic, things are not the same as when he left them, because once you tamper with something, no matter how much you try to put it back together, it's not always going to be the same. Maybe when he returns, Affleck's not his Bruce Wayne anymore. This could be the final outing and some closure for Ben Affleck's leaving of the DCEU. Could be, could not. I had always been saying since the announcement of the Snyder Cut that we will be getting that, because we do know that Affleck had a huge passion for Snyder's vision. If the outing of the Snyder Cut on HBO Max is successful, they could run with it. We could be getting, we've been seeing the Justice League storyline, everything to do with bringing all the characters back together again, has been on hold completely since then. What if this succeeds they move forward with Zack Snyder's Justice League 2 and follow through with that. I don't think anything that's come out of the DC pantheon since would contradict what we know of Snyder's vision for the Justice League original film. So far, I don't think we have any major contradictions to it. So they could still follow through with that. They could still follow through with their own iteration on that, or Flashpoint could just wipe all of it out and retcon what they want to change. They can keep what they want to and change what they need to keep the continuity intact and move forward with what they're going to keep and discard what will no longer be there. But let's pick up where that's a whole other conversation we could get into. So let's kind of continue with the interview. That's just something that came in mind. I wanted to address it because I know if we tried to come back to that later in the video, I'd probably forget what I wanted to talk about or forget about it altogether. DC still has other motivations for exploring the story. Batman is too valuable a character to leave fallow for too long. The new actors will forever be stepping into the role, and by threading the concept of a multiverse into its DC storyline, Warner Brothers is attempting to create a way for all of the competing factions of its fandom to coexist together. Keeping a broad coalition of fans from battling over what is legitimate is one of the biggest challenges for studios managing franchises with vast appeal and decades of history. Sony's animated Into the Spider-Verse also helped popularize the alternate dimension concept, introducing Miles Morales' character to a host of different Spider-Folk. So far, the multiverse approach has helped DC both differentiate itself and revisit the same characters without being accused of rebooting or erasing recent favorites. DC TV shows such as Arrow, Batwoman, Black Lightning, and Supergirl have done crossover events, and a few months ago, the Crisis on Infinite Earths storyline laid the groundwork for the multiverse concept, with Miller's movie Flash making an appearance in that story by coming face to face with the TV Flash played by Grant Gustin. Not only that, but they also continued the Christopher Reeve Superman with Crisis on Infinite Earths, bringing Brandon Routh back to reprise that role that he played back in Superman Returns, as well as Birds of Prey. The Adam West show made an appearance, as well as a glimpse of Michael Keaton's cinematic universe. That, too, was something that I talked about as well, and when we covered that live, when we reacted to the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover event, as well as some things we've talked about before when talking about the Flash movie, for what we've learned about it. What if that segment from Crisis on Infinite Earths is part of Andy Muschietti's plan for the Flash film? That was part of Barry experimenting with his ability to time travel, to hop into these other universes. And what if that is an element of the Flash storyline that we'll see in the movie? Will Grant Gustin also appear in that? Will it just be that scene involved, or will we get a reference to this interaction with another Flash? Ugh, that gets me excited to the possibilities, because if they do this right, this will be huge. This movie goes on. This is more continuing Muschietti's words here. This movie is a bit of a hinge in the sense that it presents a story that implies a unified universe where all the cinematic iterations that we've seen before are valid. It's inclusive in the sense that it's saying all you've seen exists and everything you will see exists in the same unified universe. Barbara Muschietti, to kind of continue back on the Ben Affleck thing too and his involvement, told Vanity Fair that there have been all sorts of stories and things he said about having a hard time playing Batman, and it had been difficult for him. I think it is more about a difficult time in his life. When we approached him, he's now in a very different time in his life. He's very open to it, which was a bit of a surprise to us. It was a question mark. We're all human. We go through great times in our lives and terrible times in our lives. Right now, he's in a place where he can actually enjoy being Batman. Plus, he doesn't have to carry the entire movie. It's a pivotal role, but at the same time, it's a fun part, she says. Guys, this is awesome. This has so much potential to do some amazing stuff for the DC fandom, for DC TV, for DC film. Kind of really cementing what a lot of us have been saying for a long time, because there has been a lot of these segments, these fractured segments of the DC fandom, people who just cannot unify on any of it. There's people that are hardcore only into the films and throw their shade at the TV stuff. There's things that go the opposite direction. I've always been on the side that it's DC is DC. There's no one better than the other. It's all part of the same universe. It's all part of the same fandom. It's all the same. DC is DC. These are different versions of these characters. These are different takes on these characters. They can coexist. It's ingrained into the comic book DNA of the DC universe itself. The multiverse has always been a threaded concept of the DC universe, the DC comics, for as long as I could remember. It's just been a thread since the very first Crisis event in the comic books, since the very first concept of an alternate Earth has been there. It's been a way to explain that any take on any character is valid and can coexist, and we're getting just confirmation of that and reformation of that, assurance of that from the film universe, if this comes to fruition, is a huge thing to call out. And I hope it does unite the fandom. I know there's still going to be people that still push back against certain segments and certain iterations, certain things. But I just think that we just need to like come together with this and unify and accept that the DC multiverse is exactly that. You can love any iteration of anybody that's donned the cowl, and it's valid. It doesn't invalidate your preference. It doesn't invalidate any other person's preference. If they like a different version of the character, that version exists, your version exists. They will always exist. And I think if they embrace this, like they have been, you know, when they released the Joker, they weren't concerned about people getting confused. I'm sure some of the executives were, but look how that turned out. The masses were not confused. That movie made over $1 billion. It wasn't connected to the other universes. It was its own take. It was its own universe. It was its own iteration of the character, and it could coexist with everything else out there. And so can this. This will be a spectacle to see, and I hope that this also opens the door, that they also confirmed that Keaton would be playing his Batman. You know, a lot of we had some speculations about his involvement once that was announced, that they were approaching him about a role in the film. People were wondering, will he play Thomas Wayne in the altered timeline when Flash goes back in time? Or would he be playing an alternate timeline where he maybe sets up a Batman Beyond? And maybe they could still do that with Tim Burton's future leading into a Batman Beyond timeline. Who knows? But I think what this does also, which is something that I was really hoping for, because it would be a casting waste to not have some timeline where we see Jeffrey Dean Morgan come back from his BVS role as Thomas Wayne in the alternate timeline created by Flashpoint, donning the cape and cowl in a universe where Bruce died and the Waynes survived. I hope they go that route. I hope we get to see all of it. I hope this movie gives us everything we want and more. I hope this movie comes through, man. I hope this movie succeeds. I hope it nails this, because it is quite the feat to pull this off. And I hope they can do it, man. I really do. This opens a lot of doors for conversation. And let's do that down in the comments after the video, guys, because that's all I got to say on this topic in the meantime, because I don't know what else to say. I'll probably think of some stuff after this. So let's carry on the conversation down in the comments, guys. And God, man, this is huge, man. This is crazy. I love it. 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 Anyway, guys, that's it for this video. Hopefully, I will see you live at DC Fandom. Take care, everybody.